nobody knew where we were. But now the room is pretty much filled up. So many of you are aware because you were there. Earlier today, we had another meeting of this commission up in Northampton, and that was also quite well attended. And as part of our mandate, we're having a distribution of regional hearings of the Rail Commission. So welcome. My name is Bill Strauss. I'm a state rep from Mattapoisett, which is in Massachusetts. And it's just not the same area code where we are. I am the House co-chair of the Joint Committee on Transportation, but also by virtue of legislation that we did last year that was signed by then Governor Baker as part of providing or authorizing $275 million of state funds toward the mic. There, it's back. We created this commission to look at some of the discrete issues involving passenger rail service in Western Mass. And I have pointed out at some of the other commission meetings, although, and it's much better shorthand to call it West-East or East-West rail. To be fair, it's a much broader issue. And certainly that was on display today in Northampton with the North-South corridor, and also some of the testimony we received in the Berkshires as well. So it's a broader issue, but that doesn't mean that anyone should limit themselves in their comments tonight as to the Springfield focus. Sitting with me is my co-chair from the legislature, but also in the commission, Senator Crichton from Lynn. And we will, this evening, we have a sign-in list. We will also, in due course, have a presentation from one of the commission members, similar to what was presented earlier today. That is Meredith Schlesinger, the administrator of the Rail Division of MassDOT, on some of the background information and the fact that I think people should be aware of things that have happened really only in the last year and a half, thanks to some federal legislation under the Biden administration and the Congress. And we will, excuse me. We will ask members of the commission to introduce themselves. I would ask, because, given the amount of information we did obtain earlier today, I do see some names I recognize from earlier today. The record of the commission is established by the virtue of the comments made. So I would ask people to use their discretion unless there's something maybe they neglected to point out in their earlier testimony. Second testimony on the same day isn't essentially required. So I'll leave that to your thought. We do try and limit the statements because of the number of people and the fact that this is an evening meeting to 4 minutes. That's not always easily done, but we ask you to. I would point out, I think if you read out loud the Gettysburg Address, it comes in at about 4 minutes. So if he could do something that momentous in that amount of time, we could do well also. I do want to acknowledge first some members of the commission who are legislative colleagues, and I'll do one of those recognitions. I think the senator will do another, but at least we're either right in your district or within a few inches of your district, and that's Representative Williams. So if you wanted to address the meeting, Chair, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Strauss, Senator Creighton, good to see you. And welcome. And some days, Carlos Gonzalez and myself, we kind of share this district on the borderline, but you are in the 11th in the district, which is shared by Senator Gomez. And certainly, as I look out, I see so many familiar faces that have been on this forefront well, it wasn't East-West Rail at that time, Commissioner Strauss. We were just trying to get west to east. And I want to thank all those advocates for years and years and years for staying on the battlefield. And you still look good. You're still pressing on. And this great situation hopefully will take place in our lifetime. But I know that the work is going into it, which 5 years ago, we would not be having this conversation. There was no momentum. And as I always say, and they know, Chairman Strauss, Creighton, we always call ourselves the 413. We're 413. 413 strong. Berkshire's all the way down. And I think that's important that we got the attention of leadership in Boston. And we made our case that we need the economic engine that Boston has. It's the tale of two cities. You remember that? It was the best of times and the worst of times. And in Boston, it's always seems to be the best of times. And we need to capitalize on that. Now, this is like making a cake. I want to commend Chairman Strauss and Co-Chair Creighton for all the public testimony. We've been up in the Berkshires, they were up in Northampton today, in Springfield, in the Valley, and certainly for all your due diligence and your hard work. This is not easy. It's not easy getting public testimony, but they've made the case, and we wanted hearings out here in the Valley. This is the Valley. So we're making this cake. We're getting all the ingredients. We're getting all the public testimony. The next charge, how many more meetings do we have left? Two beyond. And certainly all the evidence, then the cake has to be made. And that I would suggest to you, that is when the real work will start. So thank you for showing up, making us look good. Because, you know, if you don't look good here, they go back in Boston, they talk about you. I was out there in Rep. Williams District, you had 3 people. But thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. And by the way, Senator Creighton has a 2.5-hour ride going back to Lynn. And Chairman Strauss has a 2-hour and
Well, maybe 2.5.
2.5. They get a chance, Rep. Saunders and Senator Jake and let's see, Adam. They see how we feel. And we do this all the time. So thank you.
Well, yes, and that's a good introduction. I always cringe when somebody brings up Tale of Two Cities, because if you messed up there, you lost your head. So we don't want to have that consequence. But my drive into Boston, and I do think it's fair to point out, my region of the state later this year, but it's been 30 years working on it, will be to reconnect Southeastern Mass, New Bedford and Fall River, New Bedford, which I represent in part, by commuter rail. So I have more than sympathy, but understanding of what these kind of issues involve. And I would say, when we're talking about the connectivity that people are after here, the important thing is to remember, work has to go on, not just in Western Mass to make this a reality, but in Eastern Mass, as far as Boston itself. I have said some things publicly. People should understand we have a station in Boston, South Station, which requires work to make this also a reality, and that's something I know benefits Amtrak, benefits other parts of the state, but it's not a bad thing to have allies in this. I want to recognize 2 additional colleagues who are not on the commission The senator will recognize Senate colleagues, but to ask if they wanted to have a few words. First is my colleague Orlando Ramos. I saw you. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, honorable members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to testify before your committee this evening on this very important issue. As a longtime supporter of this initiative and as someone who has attended many meetings and hearings on East-West Rail, I'm grateful that we decided to hold this hearing here in the city of Springfield. Back in 2005, I read a book written by Pulitzer Award winner Thomas Friedman titled "The World is Flat: A Brief History of the 21st Century." It's a book about the globalization and leveling of the playing field by emerging economies. The idea that in the internet age, for example, companies are no longer restricted by geographical location. Fast forward 15 years later, a little thing called COVID-19 happened. And although this effort began long before the COVID-19 pandemic, the pandemic itself highlighted the need for East-West Rail. And municipalities post-pandemic are starting to realize that what Thomas Friedman wrote back in 2005 also applies to cities and towns. We are no longer restricted by our geographical location. According to a recent study conducted by Stanford University and the University of Chicago, it's estimated that around 30% of the workforce will remain remote post-pandemic. So this opens up a myriad of possibilities for the city of Springfield. This makes Springfield an attractive destination for economic development and growth. It also makes Springfield much more affordable compared to Boston and New York for companies looking to relocate remote and hybrid hubs. And with the expansion of rail service, we can help turn these possibilities into reality. So I thank you for your consideration. And like Rep. Williams said, let's bake that cake.
Thank you, Rep. We also have, and he's been at a couple of other commission meetings, Rep. Aaron Saunders. I can't see beyond there. Okay.
That line of sight. Thank you, Chair Strauss and Chair Crichton for being here and being present in Western Mass so often. I want to follow the words to continue the metaphor of two of our head chefs, Chair Williams and Representative Ramos. This project and East-West Rail collectively is not only a transformational opportunity from a transit perspective. I know you have heard and will hear from folks a lot smarter than me on this topic, but it presents a transformational economic development opportunity for the entirety of Western Massachusetts. I represent the 7th Hamden District, which is communities that run south to north, touching 4 different counties. The entirety of the 7th Hamden District benefits from West-East Rail. And it's due in no small part to the folks on the commission here today, colleagues in the legislature, and one other who I would be remiss not to point out is our Congressman, Richie Neal, whose steadfast support and gentle nudging from time to time on this project, I think has largely brought us here today. The second and the last point I'd like to offer is that we talk an awful lot about Boston. And as much as we would love to send Chair Strauss and Chair Crichton back home on trains from here, let's not lose sight of the connectivity with Worcester. We're watching, I think by all accounts, a renaissance in the city of Worcester. And that connectivity between the western part of the state and the central part of the state is key to the continued economic development and prosperity of our entire Commonwealth. Please call on me if there's anything I can do to help with these efforts, and I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, and the rep makes a great point. The connections result in developments and growth and opportunities in directions that people really didn't anticipate. So Yeah, that's why we do these things. So, all the way from Amherst. I'm sorry. Come on down.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. And my being here from Amherst, I'm Mindy Dom. I'm the state rep from the 3rd Hampshire District, representing Amherst, the great city known as the town of Amherst, and half of Granby, is to demonstrate that the northern route and the southern route would both benefit the residents of my district in terms of west-east rail. Amherst is smack in the middle, and it's equally accessible for us to get to Greenfield and to Springfield, and we'd like both. I'm here to also thank you so much for having these in-person hearings in Western Mass. I'm sorry that you'll have to drive home tonight for 2.5 hours, because I know how that feels. I hope you have a little bit of something to eat or some coffee before you go so that you be safe. And I feel like saying, call me when you get home. We need enhanced public transit in Western Mass. We need more rail and we need more bus service. We need regional transit authorities are also in great need of our attention from the legislature, and we need increased rail. And one of the ways I like to think about the value and the success of rail in the region right now is if we look at the Valley Flyer, which started out as a pilot. COVID came, sort of locked everything down, but the Valley Flyer was a huge success, the north-south route. And that tells you something. It tells you that when residents came out and said, we need rail, they were also willing to go into rail. They were willing to go and use rail. I want to talk just a little bit, if I may, about, from my district, what the benefits would be for west-east rail, east-west rail in particular. Coming to the area, coming to Amherst, we would see not only people who are coming to the university, Amherst College, Hampshire College, Mount Holyoke College, Smith, the whole college community, be able to attend conferences, apply for jobs, look for homes, and also participate in programming and performing arts. We would be able to see people coming to our museums. In Amherst, we have 5 really wonderful museums. When I ran for office and met with the people from the Eric Carle Museum, for example, they told me about the numbers of educators that would come from New York up to Amherst for programming around children's literature, and what rail would mean in terms of them being able to also go, not just to Amherst, but to go across the state. We also have beautiful natural resources where folks, in fact, could come to Amherst to enjoy hiking, trails, climbing mountains. But I also want to talk a little bit about something that I don't think is recognized in Amherst, and that's we have a lot of people who live in Amherst and commute to Boston. Not just me. We have people, I've met parents of my kids' friends when they were growing up who were working in the medical institutions in Boston, who would grab a bus in Springfield at 5 o'clock in the morning to get to work for the day and then come home. And that's ridiculous. We live in the Commonwealth. We should be more connected. We should be able to give people an opportunity when they take the train to be able to help us meet our climate goals as well as their own employment goals. In our area, the train not only helps meet climate goals, helps with economic development, as you've heard, helps with tourism, but it will also connect us to the rest of the state in a way that we haven't been, and that's valuable. I want to thank you. I know this is around the governance issues. If I can just put in 2 plugs, which may or may not be relevant to governance, but I'll say them, and I'm sure the chairman will let me know later that they were out of line or in line. I would urge you to consider a reliable, dependable funding stream for all rail in Massachusetts, not just Western Mass. I want to include Southeast in this funding stream, whether that's another penny on the sales tax or we cut up that pie a little bit that's been going to the MBTA. Not for me to say, I'm not smart enough to say, but we need a reliable funding stream for rail that happens outside of Boston. And I also think in terms of governance, we should think about regional governance. It's not that we are so unique from the Southeast, but the folks who do regional rail will understand not only regional need, but regional ridership, regional interest, regional preferences, which will help to make rail more successful. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Welcome to Western Mass. I hope you come back. And I really appreciate your due diligence that you're giving this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. You make a great point on the regional issue, and I'll steal it from somebody's testimony earlier today. On the governance issue, referring to the regional transit authorities. So in some sense, we could think of these as buses on railroad tracks.
Absolutely.
In
I
terms
love
of the
that
government.
idea.
Well, there you go. You can take it now.
No, you can take it and I'll credit you with it, sir.
At this point, I'll turn it over to my Senate colleague.
you.
He has some colleagues to introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief with my introduction. Just want to say thank you to all of you for coming out here. Obviously, we all have, work lives, home lives, family lives, and you took the time to come out at 6 o'clock to be with us to testify. And across all of these hearings, we certainly sense the passion and all the work that so many people have put in to advance this project. So we thank you. We thank Springfield Technical Community College. We thank our legislative hosts and really appreciate your time here. We're going to do more listening than talking, but I did just want to recognize a few of my Senate colleagues. First, I'm going to start off with the commissioners that are here. Senator Adam Gomez, I don't know if you want to share a few words or just say hello.
Hi,
The floor is yours.
so I want to thank all of you and all the commissioners for making we've been working since early. And I just want to say thank you for coming to the birthplace of basketball, the birthplace of Dr. Seuss, the home of the quadrangle. There's so many homes. We're the city of first, homes of Webster's Dictionary. There's a lot of history and a lot of reason why we're going to be known as now the home of the crossroads. So all PVTA. I dropped the mic on that one. Thank you. But I do have to give it to my friends that made it all the way here from Chester, which the crossroads originated. And I take my hats off to Mr. Daly and his colleague that has been so adamant when it comes to making it to every single rail meeting in Western Massachusetts. And I know that if we did have a rail way to get to Boston, they'd be there too. So for the most part, we are at a time and a place when we heard a unique word called a renaissance. And Springfield economically has gone through a renaissance. But me and my partake on this governance is to understand how does this benefit communities of color as well, and also rural communities. And the importance of understanding, that we have the RTA hub here, which everybody knows, if you're on this side of state, we know PVTA. In Spanish, we call this something else, but we're not going to go there. But then we have the intentionality of myself being on the city council and being able to support the one that I got to work with last session, which was Senator Eric Lesser, but then moreover to really learn from the mentorship on how important it was to create Union Station, which came from Congressman Richard Neal, which has always been steadfast in supporting the needs and the things for the region. I think where we're at now is understanding that one, is it MassDOT or is it Amtrak? Or when it comes to intersectionality, when it comes to the different states and different routes that are coming in and out from New York, Vermont. I hear the Vermonter and the Valley Flyer every day because I live out in Plainfield. So, the train tracks come right by my house every single day. So seeing those, how frequent those trains came from north to south, I knew what it can look like and what it means for the whole region. For rural Massachusetts and also for Western Mass, because obviously there's always this separation that they think everything west of 495 is Western Massachusetts, where some of us came from the West. So I just want to thank you guys for making that ride too. So moreover, I just want to welcome you here to the Hampden District. I want to thank all my Senate colleagues and also commissioners for being here. And I look forward to listening to all your testimony. And I look forward to making sure that, the needs and making sure that jobs come to this district and the people that live here also are be able to work on this if it comes to fruition. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to speak and look forward to everyone else's testimony. Stay blessed.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that. Next, I'd like to acknowledge my great colleague and friend, Senator Ann Goby.
I'll be very quick. Ann Goby, I represent 22 communities from Ware to Worcester. And I would be remiss to say, since you were talking about basketball, the North High Polar Bears became the state champions of Division I on Sunday night. So we're very proud of them. Take it away.
Thank you, Senator. Sorry we didn't congratulate you at the start of the meeting. It's a big deal for all of us. Next, I'd like to welcome a good friend and colleague, Senator Joe Comerford, to speak.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Joe Comerford, the Hampshire Franklin Worcester District. That's 25 cities and towns from Northampton to Winchendon. So thank you so much for this wonderful hearing.
Thank you, Senator. And we also have from the Senate who signed up to testify, Senator Jake Oliver.
Thank you, Chairman Crichton, Chairman Strauss. It's nice to be here before you and to share the city of Springfield with my great friend and colleague, State Senator Adam Gomez. Welcome to the city of Holmes. We're delighted to have you here, and to echo some of the comments of my colleagues that came before me, including Chairman Williams, is Springfield is at a crossroads right now. We are at the crossroads of New England. I represent 12 communities here in Western Massachusetts, but also areas that haven't really had the benefit of rail in quite some time. And it's a community that Ann Goby represented for many years in the state Senate, but a community that I now represent, and that's the community of Palmer. And I think it's important to point out that Governor Healy, in her budget that she proposed on March 1st, included funding for 2 stops along this rail line that have not had station improvements in many years. That's both the 2 Ps, the city of Pittsfield and the town of Palmer. Palmer is not the crossroads of New England. It is the gateway to Western Massachusetts. And ensuring, as I have on my sticker on my lapel here today, the Palmer stop on the West-East rail line that has been included in every proposal is the best possible link to connect communities around the 5 colleges to the West-East rail link that stretches from the Berkshires to Boston. And I'm just so pleased to be here today to fight alongside so many advocates who have fought so long to restore Palmer as that gateway for rail service to Western Massachusetts. Palmer is a community where my great-grandparents settled as Polish immigrants. It was one of the larger communities here in Western Massachusetts, built in part due to the rail. We have an opportunity once again to inject that type of economic development, that type of transportation infrastructure in a community, as Senator Goby knows, needs it desperately. Right now, the governor's proposal has set a marker in the budget to make transit improvements to the Palmer stop and to the Pittsfield stop because they are so essential to our rail conversation to connect Boston with central and Western Massachusetts. So as I'm here today, and you've heard a lot of testimony over the last several commission hearings, I just wanted to just first of all say that Palmer is such an essential part of this stop on West East Rail to connect us to the Boston area, particularly for the fact that Palmer, if you're going to the University of Massachusetts, or Amherst College, or Hampshire College, or one of the 5 colleges around that area, you get off the Massachusetts Turnpike in Palmer because it's the easiest connection. And Palmer is essential for this growth of this West-East rail line. Obviously, the benefits here for the city of Springfield are great. There are so many things that the Union Station stop can do for both Senator Gomez and my district to connect us to our state capital. It's unconscionable to me that it's easier to get to 3 other state capitals than it is to my very own. West East Rail will improve that, it will grow that, and will make our Commonwealth whole again, similar to what it has done, Chairman Strauss, in the coming future for the South Coast area of this Commonwealth. So again, I have probably gone longer than the Gettysburg Address. However, I want to make sure you get to the metropolis of Metapoiset at a reasonable time, and Chairman Crichton, you get back to Lynn, but count me as a steadfast supporter of West East Rail from Boston to Framingham to Worcester to Palmer to Springfield to the Berkshires in Pittsfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We miss you in the House. I mean, well, yes, we used to sit right with each other in the 4th Division. So there's no higher honor, and that's I'm going to risk it. But in also pointing out, my Senate co-chair used to be a member of the House. So You're still a rep in my book, you know, and two. But I did want to acknowledge, then we'll go to members of the committee, two other people. Member of the commission is Rep Sabadosa for Northampton, of course. Welcome. She hosted us earlier today. And the congressman was mentioned, and his aide Elizabeth Quigley is here. And the congressman has had representation at every one of these hearings so far. So people should be clear about that. With that, we'll introduce, start down at the end, the members of the commission to the public.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Leah Robbins. I'm here on behalf of the Metro West Regional Collaborative, which is a group of 9 communities on the western edge of the metropolitan region of Boston.
Good evening. I'm Kim Robinson. I'm the Executive Director of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, which represents Hampden and Hampshire counties. We've got 43 communities. Thanks for being here tonight.
I was just going to lean over you. It's okay.
Linda Dunleavy, Franklin Regional Council of Governments serving Franklin County. I've already, oh, you've already did, yeah. Merritt's great.
Production. Meredith Schlesinger, I'm the Rail and Transit Administrator at MassDOT.
Okay, I'm Tom Matusko with the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. We serve the 32 cities and towns in Berkshire County, and I'm glad to hear all the support for Pittsfield.
I'm Paul Lundberg from Gloucester, and my professional background is in management of freight and rail passenger.
Hi, everybody. My name's Mike Nilder. I'll just quickly mention, as a kid, I grew up in Agawam, just across the river. I got married at the church just outside the window here. I'm currently a professor at UMass and a resident of Belchertown. So I'm connected to a lot of the different communities that are affected by the conversation tonight. As director of the Transportation Center, I'm happy to hear what everybody has to say.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sujata Krishnan from Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, sitting in for Janet Pierce, our Executive Director. Our region covers Worcester and 39 surrounding communities. We have really good rail connection east of our region, but the west half of our region does not have the connection. So we'd like to see this move forward towards Springfield.
Hi, my name is Hayes Morrison. I'm representing Secretary Gina Viandaca for MassDOT, and I am also not looking forward to my 2-hour drive home.
Thank you. And before I recognize the first person to sign up to testify, I was remiss. Senator Markey's aide is here, and Senator Markey, there she is. You want to say anything or something? Okay, and Senator has been represented at all these commission meetings as well. So first on, and at some point midway through the presentations, we'll have the Administrator Schlesinger will make her presentation with a summary of where some of the current events, so to speak, are with regard to the funding applications and design work for the project. So first, I'd like to call up. We have the Mayor of Chicopee, Mayor Soto.
Chloe for Mayor, if you couldn't make it today.
I apologize.
No worries. No
But we're
worries.
happy to have you.
Thank you very much, Brian and Strauss and Honorable Commission. My name is Chloe Soto. I'm the Communications and Special Projects Manager for the City of Chicopee, and Mayor View is in full support of this project. I'm honored to stand before you today to discuss the issue that affects us all, the housing crunch and worsening congestion in the Northeast. While other cities are struggling to alleviate these regional challenges, the Pioneer Valley is primed to take on a task with affordable, high-quality life. For nearly 5 decades, the Metro Springfield-Hartford region has lacked real west-east rail options, limiting our connectivity to the larger northeast region. This has resulted in slow job growth, an aging housing stock, and widening inequalities of opportunity and income. This is a challenge, and we all as a Commonwealth need to resolve this issue. A recent study commissioned by the Greater Hartford Capital Region Council of Governments and the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission projects that nearly 10-to-1 return on investment in the regional GDP over a 30-year period as a result of the restored service along the inland route. This increase in regional GDP could represent between 20 to 40,000 jobs in information technology, finance, and professional services, as well as an extensive transit-oriented development. In addition to clear economic benefits, expanded passenger rail in the valley supports our Commonwealth transportation sector decarbonization goals. The appetite for passenger rail in Western Mass has already been demonstrated in the Valley Flyers graduation from pilot status to permanent service this past fall. However, it is critical that any governing body has structural means established for local voices and input to be heard, concerns addressed, and opportunities capitalized upon. We must work together to ensure that this expansion benefits all the communities in Western Massachusetts. In conclusion, the Pioneer Valley is primed to alleviate regional challenges, and expanded West-East passenger rail service is the key to our success. So let's work together to ensure that our region remains affordable, high quality, a place to live, work, and thrive in all communities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And I didn't want to start any rumors that you're running for mayor, so yeah.
I'd never do that to myself, but
Don't worry. My apologies. I do want to recognize that our colleague Carlos Gonzalez, his office is represented here with his aide this evening. Next, signing up, Tim Sheehan.
Good evening, Tim Sheehan, Chief Development Officer for the City of Springfield. I too want to extend to the commission thanks for holding this hearing here in Springfield. As the world continues to build regional connectedness throughout efficient mass transit networks faster than ever before, and ridership demand worldwide is increasing, the United States continues to lag behind Asia and Europe in mass transit, with New York City singularly in the United States to be ranked among the global top 10 busiest transit systems. American policymakers, transit stakeholders, and voters need to be shown the close interconnection between connected mass transit infrastructure, such as East-West Rail, and regional prosperity. Indeed, passenger rail infrastructure and economic development cannot be seen as separate issues. As we advance East-West Rail, expand the Valley Flyer and the Connecticut service to Hartford and New Haven, we begin to regionally approximate a sense of interconnectedness and proportional economic opportunity. Business, trade, and tourism do not flow to places without adequate infrastructure connections. Passenger rail service supports the clustering and connection of people and ideas, which is foundational to innovation and economic growth. It is time we build back stronger and better the real rail options that Springfield metro area has lacked for nearly 5 decades, and allow Western Mass to share more equally in the economic advantages and opportunities that come with better connectedness to Eastern Massachusetts through rail unification of the entire state, not just part of it. As Mayor Sarno stated in his written remarks, Springfield recognizes and appreciates the governor and lieutenant governor's commitment to this effort. As represented in their recently filed budget, the city also recognizes the tenacity and effort put forward by Congressman Neal in getting to this important point in the East-West Rail effort, along with so many other legislators. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Amanda Pham.
Evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Amanda Pham, Executive Director for the Springfield Redevelopment Authority, owner and operator for Springfield Union Station. Historically, Union Station has been an important part of the rail system in the Northeast, being situated at the crossroads, connecting both east-west and north-south activity, and are encouraged by the advancements and discussions surrounding expanded passenger rail service, as well as strong support amongst many of you here today, as well as the Healy administration and Congressman Neal. Since my start at the Redevelopment Authority back in 2010 and our completion of the $94 million renovation of our beautiful Union Station, I've seen firsthand how powerful transportation-focused investments have on a region. This once blighted building now serves as an intermodal transportation center, offering its average 2 million patrons annually with consolidated access to transit resources. Similar to Union Station's long-awaited restoration, funding and strong advocacy for the importance of its rebirth took time, but needed to get done. Equally so, the forthcoming infrastructure improvements and development of a rail authority for Western Mass is critical to empowering our region to accelerate equitable growth, make environmental advancements, create jobs, and expand housing opportunities, all with a focus to Western Mass. We have seen great success with the pilot Valley Flyer program and success on our neighboring state, Connecticut, with the Hartford line. It not only exceeded expectations on ridership projections, but also saw a tremendous amount of transit-oriented development that spurred amongst the communities along the line. Expansion of passenger rail will also aid in the connectivity of our future cybersecurity center coming to Union Station. STCC, in cooperation with a consortium of area higher education institutions, will further enhance and strengthen our workforce and highlight our region as a premier hub for diverse and qualified talent through this dynamic center. Our Commonwealth needs to improve its rail infrastructure to expand and broaden access to reliable transportation options. It is unfortunate that this part of the state is so disconnected from the East. Strengthening these connections will only further strengthen the Commonwealth as a whole. Substantial increases in program funding towards transportation and infrastructure upgrades makes this a unique opportunity and prime moment for the region to implement its planning efforts around passenger rail. Union Station is ready and excited to welcome additional patrons to its facility, as the station will be an integral part of these proposed enhancements for passenger rail. Springfield is a center for commerce and economic development in Western Mass, and expanding reach and resources on this truly transformative and generational project will have lasting impacts past the physical improvements proposed. I make these statements on behalf of the Springfield Redevelopment Authority as confirmation and support and appreciation to the leadership and representation that serves on this commission as we advance investments in sustainable transportation infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to point out we have two commission members who are participating remotely. Rep. Natalie Blay is participating remotely. She was earlier today at the Northampton hearing, and also Mike Muller from the MBTA. And in that regard, people can see the screens and should realize that it's remote viewing and participation. We do take questions and testimony from members of the public who cannot make it here. And what that does is it also allows people from all around the state to follow this as well. And in that respect, I do want everyone to understand what a technical achievement this is. I want to thank the secretary for making MassDOT staff available, and it's worth thanking them for the work that they've done at all these meetings. You can thank them on the way out too. This is the face of what these kind of hearings should be and will be going forward. So that said, next signing up, I have Bob Daly.
Good evening, everybody. Chairman Strauss, Chairman Creighton, all the commissioners present. Thank you. Thank you for your service. which is so welcome and so important to creating the future that the Commonwealth from Roxbury to Richmond not only deserves, but needs. Thanks to Senator Adam for making the one mention, at least so far, of Chester. I hope you'll allow me for 5 seconds to just pile on a bit and point out that the station, the historic station, 1841 historic station, which is now a national historic landmark in Chester, was at the origin of the Western Railroad, 50 feet from the track. That's where it is today, 50 feet from the track. In my opinion, the best rail infrastructure in the country, fully equipped with all safety management systems and positive train control. And our historic station has been well loved and well cared for and is capable of receiving passengers again, as it did up until the 1970s. So I hope you'll keep us on your radar, the town of Chester. So the need for transformative daily intercommunity passenger rail service is well documented. The studies are complete. Federal and state stars have aligned. The critical mass of consensus has been reached, and there's a pot of gold on the horizon. We're now at the point that Yogi Berra once said, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. Take the actionable opportunity to create our own future. The last mile of a journey is often the most challenging. Put in place an operating model that is economical in scale, yet effective and efficient in scope. A model supported by the Western Mass Rail Coalition, who made that brilliant presentation to you earlier today in Northampton. That includes, in my mind, that would include voting members of the underserved communities, such as Palmer in the east, Pittsfield in the west, and Chester in the real rural heartland of, as Bud would call it, 413 affectionately. The need for equity, mobility, and connectivity require our voice at the table, our Western Mass voice at the table. We urge you to recommend an independent Western Mass Rail Authority populated by Western Mass members. I thank you for the opportunity. Best of luck.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Richard Holtzman.
Thank you very much. It's difficult to follow Bob Daly. He's gifted, but I've met you all before. You've met me, so I want to be careful not to repeat myself too much, and because the hour is getting late. But I think it's important to look at some of the things beyond what may have been mentioned before about the challenge of climate change. And I believe that this East-West Rail is critically important as a way to have maximum safety and security in the Commonwealth. And therefore, it's in the mutual enlightened self-interest of every citizen of the Commonwealth to realize that we need arteries to get away from the highly densely populated area. And I have child lives in Belmont, family, and so on. But we also live in Chester, and we see the opportunities. There's the opportunity to become really, it already is a cultural powerhouse. It is a historic powerhouse. It can become an economic powerhouse by looking at all the area. It's an enlarged metropolitan area, but I think in the future, you're going to see significant development here just because Boston can't become Singapore. I don't think we really want that in our Commonwealth. But I think it's a compact state in a lot of ways, and there are ways that we can connect it so that we have ways out of the highly densely areas for people to dense areas to live in other parts, in particular the rural areas. And I'd just like to remind you that Chester is a border town. It's a gateway to the Berkshires and beyond, and it's a gateway to Springfield and Boston. And that is very significant historically, and it's even more significant now because there's palpable interest and enthusiasm in all of the 20+ hill towns that fed into Chester, the hub of the southern hill towns. So while speaking about Chester, I think we have to think about Chester and its connectivity with all the parts of the state. Thank you much, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. Next to sign in, Richard Allen.
Good evening. My name is Richard Allen. I'm a lifelong Springfield resident. I'm thrilled to see so many distinguished public officials here to listen to testimony. And so many of my former colleagues at City Hall. I spent 39 of my 63 years serving at Springfield City Hall. I see my good friend Bud Williams, Adam Gomez, so many people in the audience. It's great to be amongst longtime friends. I think everyone has spoken eloquently of the economic justification and the need and the benefit and merit for economic development reasons and cultural and just the long-term planning of the public infrastructure in the state. I think that case is pretty clear and compelling. And as I understand it, the focus of this commission is more to recommend a structure and governing entity to kind of bring that forward and to allow the process to continue constructively and to bring the vision to reality. So in that regard, I've thought, I said 39 years at City Hall, and I was the chairman of the Board of Assessors for over 30 of those. I'm always careful when I'm in a public meeting. I've reflected on some of the models that have existed over the years in the Commonwealth, the MBTA with the governing board and of late, the control board that was involved with the MBTA and the advisory board, which, as I understood it, encompassed the representation from, I think, 79 cities and towns within the MBTA service jurisdiction. And I can kind of envision, and I don't know if this has been raised before, but I can kind of envision that type of dual structure, if you will, for the East-West Rail effort. And I think it's everyone here, and I listened virtually today to the testimony of the Northampton. I wasn't available to catch the Berkshire testimony, but I think everyone here, Chester, a wonderful community, and Palmer, and everybody can make a very strong, persuasive case. And I think they all have an interest at stake, and they all recognize the potential and promise of East-West Rail. And I think the advisory board model may be the way to allow those interests to be represented in a permanent way. But I think you need that governing board of 5, 7, 9 people, whatever it might be, with some really strong authority within the authority model, if you will. And there ought to be, certainly significant Western Mass representation on that. I won't say exclusive Western Mass representation, but I think there should be some, I don't know if it's a majority or what it might be, but certainly significant representation. And you also, I think, have to consider the subject matter expertise. And, if an authority is really to have the strength to operate quasi-independently, certainly within the state system, it's going to have people who are knowledgeable about bonding and finance. And operational efficiencies. And, so I don't know if it's CPA or, a public bonding expert. I see a need for that. I see a need for real estate. Potentially there's some eminent domain activity to bring this to fruition. So I see a need for that kind of, real estate appraisal or real estate lawyer expertise, and engineering. It's clear that there's a lot of engineering aspects and dimensions to this whole question, and I could see a need for a designated position for someone with an engineering background. So those are some of my thoughts, and I hope they're constructive. And again, thank you for the privilege of testifying this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allen. And I would agree, you've touched on the issues, and just so that everyone understands, there are a number of different tasks that, and in a state like Massachusetts, even in just the transportation realm, just about every model you could think of has been tried with one task or another, some with different degrees of success. And so it's how you design this, how you finance its construction, how you operate it, how you finance its operation, and then the governance. Is it some mix? Is it regionally based? And as I say, there are a number of models to look at. And so that is, as you've identified, so much of the task that the commission has before it, which then advises both the legislature and the governor going forward. Next to sign up, John Garrett.
Hello, my name is John Garrett. I'm a citizen of Greenfield, Mass. And so we drove down 91 here in some substantial amount of traffic, which I feel like is a good argument for passenger rail just in general. Greenfield, as many of you folks know, used to be kind of a hub of industrial innovation. The tap and die industries from there. No one has mentioned we're on the site of the Springfield Armory, which feels like a major oversight. When the Defense Department shut this down, it basically turned this area effectively into a part of the Rust Belt. And Boston had a tech renaissance in the 80s, and we did not. And so that's a matter of economic equity that we should be concerned about here too. And so one of the things I really would love to see with this Western Mass Rail Authority is a commitment from the authority in a form of a mission statement or something along those lines to run as frequent a service as possible at the lowest price possible, in some systematic thinking about what that's going to do to our communities. So we have the Valley Flyer, some of you folks have mentioned. Senator Gomez mentioned that this area is going through a renaissance. That's absolutely true. And again, we got to stick together with some bands of iron. For the Rust Belt, let's continue the metaphor. One of the things that came to mind, I was jotting down some notes as we were talking here, and the UN had a climate report that came out the other day. You mentioned, Chair Strauss, that 30 years for South Coast Rail. That is far too long. I have been going to meetings.
I agree.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I have no doubt you all agree. I've been going to these kind of meetings for, I lived in Chicopee when I was going to graduate school. I'm a teacher, which will come up in a second. And there's been a tendency to see sandbagging with studies, costs that are incredibly high, no comparison to areas with lower costs. I'm sure you folks are aware, some of you, about like the city of New York and how insane it is to spend money there to build things. And that keeps us from doing as much. So I'd love to see this authority tasked specifically with keeping costs down, in addition to those other goals I mentioned as well. So we can't build as much if we're wasting money. And I don't really care what contractors have relationships with who or what, but it really will be an issue for achieving our goals, which we need to by 2030, which is 7 years from now. And if this thing doesn't get off the ground soon, we're going to be driving to cars and meetings like this forever. And you guys are going to be driving 2 hours or 3 hours as the gridlock gets worse. My brother lives in the city of Los Angeles, which recently lost its title as the city with the worst traffic in the country to the city of Boston. So maybe it's going to be 4 hours, 5 hours. Is that not true anymore? It's a mile in any case. One thing they do out there as far as funding models that I've appreciated is they actually ask folks, do you want to spend more money to have better service? And so they have had, I don't remember the name of the measures, like Measure R, something like that. They have alphabet soup. And they say, hey, do you want a sales tax increase? It will build this specific project. That's excellent. I would love to see something like that. But in addition to building new shiny things, it's really important that we have an authority that's focused on maintenance. And so, we traveled down here again on Interstate 91. I'm sure you all remember those bridges collapsing in the Mississippi River. I don't want to build something new. I don't want us to build something new and have it fall down 60 years from now because we focused on the ribbon cutting and not the glory of maintenance, which I am not even kidding about. Like, it really would be beautiful if we build something that doesn't light on fire like the T. I mentioned I'm a teacher. I teach AP government. I'm going to student government day in Boston. We're going to be taking the T into the city, and I found out there's a slow zone on the entire thing. So whatever is happening, and again, all respect to the folks who are doing the work there, I'm sure it's tremendously difficult, but whatever process is happening there, we should study, again, peer systems in other parts of the world that are doing things well, but also, whatever lessons come out of that should be directly applied to this authority. The folks who were talking about the governance model, the gentleman who spoke from Springfield earlier, that is, having Western Mass input is absolutely vital. But, I think, again, just a mission statement and a goal of maintenance and frequency and cost. Like I said, in Greenfield, to take a train to Springfield can be like $27. It's airline style pricing. But then to go to Connecticut, it's always the same. And that makes it easier to get to New York than to get to Boston. And that isn't what we should be doing as a state. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is Sheila Cuddy.
Thank you, Chairman Kraus and Chairman Creighton, and the commission. Thank you all for being here. And many thanks to my colleague, Jen Healy, who ably represented the Quabog Connector and the Quabog Valley CDC at your meeting this afternoon in Northampton. I'm Sheila Cuddy. I'm the Executive Director of the Quabog Valley Community Development Corporation. We serve 20 communities spanning Belchertown to Southbridge, and that includes Palmer and all my friends who are here from our region. Also a 32-year resident of Warren, which is smack dab in the middle of the Quabog region, a town of slightly under 5,000 people. Affordable transportation options are important for our residents, our employers, and the regional and local economy. I am here to share the experience of my friends and neighbors who are riders of the Quabog Connector who use this service to get to work. Our riders and prospective rail passengers include an individual in his 60s who rode his bike the 10 miles to his part-time job at a retailer to have the respect and dignity of having gainful employment. They include a veteran with a 2-worker family who only has 1 car, who uses the Quabog Connector on a daily basis to get to a good manufacturing job that provides good support for his family. They include an individual with a visual impairment who previously relied on an aging mother to get him to his retail job as well. He now has the dignity of riding transportation, just like his other colleagues who get to work independently. As we think about transportation, I am mindful of all of the costs and the expertise that are needed to provide a vital service that needs to have sustainability. But I would like us to make sure that there is a voice for the riders and the persons who will be using this transportation service as we move forward. So I would like to talk about the importance of this people-centered piece of this puzzle that you are all ably working on and putting together. And thank you for your time and dedication to this project.
Thank you very much. Nikki Sauber. I hope I got that right.
Pretty close, Sauber. Thank you. My name is Nikki Sauber. I'm here predominantly as a citizen of Greenfield. I live by the train station, and I personally, selfishly, am very excited about the prospect of West East Rail. But this isn't about me. This isn't about Greenfield. This isn't even about Franklin County or any of the individual counties that you've had these sessions in thus far. This project is about interdependence. not independence, but interdependence. We, all of us representing counties across Massachusetts, depend on each other. We have resources that the others lack, amenities that the others need. I'd like to share an example from where I work. I work at Franklin County Regional Housing and Redevelopment Authority. We're based in Turner's Falls. And we provide public and private affordable housing across Franklin County, about 300 units. When folks apply for public housing in the Commonwealth, they apply through a centralized wait list online. And the premise of that is that no matter where they live in Massachusetts, they can get on the wait list for housing opportunities across the Commonwealth. So it gets them into opportunities that might be suitable for them sooner. So when our agency has a vacancy in our units, we look at the centralized wait list to see who is the first eligible applicant for that unit. And so when we run the wait list time and time again, because of the way our population falls out in this state, there are often more eligible applicants in the eastern part of the state. And time again, we find that eligible applicants turn down affordable housing opportunities in Franklin County, not because they aren't interested in living in this beautiful part of the state. Many wish they could and would like to. And not because there's suddenly an influx of affordable housing that's available to them, but they turn it down because they would lose access to the folks that they need access to. They would lose access to their family and loved ones in Massachusetts and Eastern Mass due to the lack of affordable public transit out here. In short, some folks would rather be unhoused than isolated from their communities. I love envisioning a more interdependent Massachusetts, where our communities and our resources and our opportunities are more connected. And to get there, all communities will need to pitch in. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert on transportation development. I know that engineering is needed. I know that legal expertise is needed. But what I'm definitely seeing is that it'll need to be shared. The load will need to be shared. We need to tap into the guidance and the expertise and governance that exist in other regional transit authorities. We need to look to other state models over across the borders in different parts of the country, even to see what's working there and build on their knowledge. And look at how we can tap into advocacy to cheerlead folks like you, all the great folks who are really driving this work forward, because I know, are stronger, we're smarter, and more sustainable together. And I know that we can do this. So thank you.
Next, I have signed up, and I apologize, Kareem Cambodia. How bad was that?
Actually, not the worst I've heard.
Not the worst.
I know many of you in this room, but for those of you that do not know me, please allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Kareem Cambodia. I am the Senior Policy Co-Lead for the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts. I was born and raised in Springfield, and growing up in this community, I was often taught that in order for me to find success, in order for me to move forward in my life, that I would have to leave this community, that I would have to look for work elsewhere. And for the longest time, I thought that was the case. But as I grew older, as I saw the people around me thriving, saw the Black businesses in my community thriving, I learned that there is opportunity here. I see that there is a renaissance happening in Springfield, and I made the decision to stay here. It was a very conscious decision. When I was offered positions in DC, Boston, and New York, but there's something special about this community that most people don't get to see. I want to make sure that not only in having these conversations are we talking about the importance of connectivity, but that we're connecting it back to some of the major issues that we're dealing with here in our state. Transportation equity impacts housing, it impacts job availability, it impacts climate change as well, and most importantly, it impacts traffic. I want to make sure that in these conversations, as we look for ways to move forward, BECMA was founded in 2015 following the Color of Wealth study, which found that while white families in the city of Boston had $247,000 in generational wealth. Black families had 8. That isn't mistype, $8. These statistics carry through around our state and around our nation. And if we aren't looking for novel and innovative ways to advance our communities of color, we are lost. Most importantly, I want to make sure that in the work that we do, it's recognized that we're not fighting for ourselves, but that we're fighting for each other, that we're working together hand in hand to resolve these issues that we have. East-West Rail will not only benefit our communities in Western Mass, it is an opportunity for community members around our state to find new ways to live and new ways to thrive. I was approached by several of our community members here in Springfield when they heard about this hearing today, members like Angela with CCR Freight over here, as well as Jillian Druki and Jasper McCoy behind me, who all represent different businesses and different industries. We're excited to hear that our delegation continues to advocate for them and that this commission is here driving out to meet people where they're at. And they wanted to make sure that they could find ways to engage, not only in finding ways to advocate for this issue, but how can we do business as this rail is built? How can we find ways to offer services of procurement? How can we find ways to join the workforce? I've cut my remarks short just because of time, and I know that you folks have a long journey back home. But I want to make sure that in having this conversation, that it is recognized that in order for this to be truly successful, in order for this to be for us, it has to be by us. I'm advocating for Western Mass Rail Authority. It's our time. Our taxpayers and our dollars have gone towards funding the Big Dig. Now they're going towards funding the MBTA system that's struggling to stay afloat. I understand that these are important initiatives. However, it is our time. Thank you.
Next is Dave Pierce.
Thank you. Thanks for holding this meeting and giving us this opportunity. I'm Dave Pierce, president of the Chester Foundation that operates the Chester Railway Museum in Chester. And I'm also president of Friends of the Keystone Arches that takes care of a hiking trail to the first cluster of stone arch railroad bridges built in America. A lot of what we think of rail all started right here on this was called the Western Railroad in 1840. The first unassisted train over a mountain was right here in Western Mass on the same rail that we're going on. And over 30 years, we've developed quite a tourist industry. I'd just like to say a lot of this is, of course, focused on commuter rail, which it should be, but Chester stands ready to be a real revenue producer for this line on a tourist basis. The station, there's actually 3 National Historic Landmarks within 10 miles of the stop in Chester. One of them is the station itself. It's one of the only original timber frame stations that were built by the Western Railroad. The second is the Keystone Arches, also a landmark. They draw their national significance from the fact that they were all by the Western Railroad. The third is Jacob's Pillow, America's oldest and largest dance festival. That's only 10 minutes from downtown Chester. So you can see there could be a lot of traffic there. They bring in thousands every year. We brought in thousands for the Arch Trail and the station, of course, all by car. We also have lodging at the station and a 100-year-old caboose, and museum visitors almost constantly in the good season. And I'd say many of those people would love to buy a ticket and take a round trip to Pittsfield and see this railroad up close, so there's a lot of potential there. Also, the city of Lee, or the town of Lee, I'm sorry, figures in. It's the home to 4 big resorts down there. Every one of those resorts has roughly 1,000 people at any one time, and that's constantly turning over. And there are people on vacation, want to spend money. They think nothing of getting on the train, go to Boston for the day or something like that. People might think first off the bat that Lee would go to Pittsfield. It's about the same distance as Chester, except Pittsfield's in the wrong direction unless you're leaving the state. You're taking a train to New York. Everything else is east. Also, the road to Pittsfield is very congested, a lot of traffic lights, whereas the road to Chester is a national scenic byway. There's not a single traffic light the whole way and very little traffic. So I think that would catch on soon, where we'd see a lot of traffic. In fact, early on in the study, we presented the commission with a letter from the Lee Board of Selectmen saying how they could see Chester as a real benefit as a stop. So those things would all work in our favor as far as, we could create a lot of revenue. I know that hasn't come up, but I think that could become a very busy stop. It has been for 30 years. We also have a top-notch theater right in Chester Theater Company. That would probably catch on. People come to Chester on the train. You get off right on Main Street. There's a restaurant on either side of the street and a short stroll of 3 blocks, and you see some of the best theater available. So that could probably catch on as a good night out, almost like a step back in time, so you might wonder, Chester's out in the middle of nowhere, but I could see it as a worthwhile stop that would create some revenue. Of course, we're the only hill town that meets Amtrak's requirement of being 25 miles from the nearest station. So we're the only one that could actually even apply. But anyway, just wanted to check in and give you some good news, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's right. I forgot my big closing line. Sorry. I think it's enough time for studies. Let's just run it and see what happens.
Meredith Babcock.
Hello, Meredith Babcock. I live in Beckett, Massachusetts. I'm here as a representative of the wild places and the critters without a voice, the natural resources, increasing our access to a shared natural resources found in good health and in abundance in Western Massachusetts without increasing an environmental impact is very, very exciting. I wanted to thank you all for your commitment to West-East, East-West rail. This project so that the next generation will think nothing of traveling by rail, spending hours reading and working or snoozing instead of watching yellow lines drift by or looking for parking when they arrive on the other end, not to mention the fewer animals that will meet their end, sacrificed running across a 4-lane highway. Personally, I hope that as this important project moves forward, you'll continue to look for segments that could have shared bike trail access to continue strengthening the recreation economy so important to the future of Western Massachusetts. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let me just give people a preview of where we are. I will call next Catherine Cagle or Kogel. I don't know. Are you here?
I am not.
Okay. Well, there is a well-known quote. I mentioned it to one of my colleagues. You do get to a point where everything's been said, but not everyone has had a chance to say it. So, but thank you very much. I mean that in the most lighthearted way. Thank you. We have one person who signed up online to testify, and I have a few more names, and so we're rounding the bend. And at that point, then we'll have our presentation from Administrator Schlesinger. Daniel Harder.
This thing on? Okay, perfect. Yeah. Hi, nice to meet you all. Thank you for coming out here to Western Mass to hear opinions. I'm here as a lifetime resident of Massachusetts. I actually graduated from high school in 2020. I graduated from STIC last year too. Currently on for engineering, and I didn't know much about trains until fairly recently. I've probably driven my girlfriend crazy about it lately. And I saw my chance to speak here and I figured might as well do it. And I think an important thing to do is to do the east-west rail right the first time. There's the three alternatives that are currently in place from the east-west rail study: alternative 3, alternative 4, and alternative hybrid 4-5. And I think we should do alternative 4-5 along with electrification as much as possible, since electrification would solve the pollution problem fairly easily. And to my knowledge, at least according to the technical report, to the report for the East-West Rail, CSX would not allow it west of Springfield, but I feel like we could at least electrify as much as we can from Springfield to Boston and run dual mode units, multiple units across the entire track and on the inland route as well. And I also think it's a chance to change how Massachusetts gets around as a state. There's the north-south rail from that goes from New Haven all the way through Hartford, Springfield, and up to Greenfield, Brattleboro for the Vermonter. And there's also the chance for the Central Corridor. There were some people here that mentioned they were from Amherst, and that's a rail line that actually goes through the city of Palmer, and it can go all the way up to Amherst and terminate at Brattleboro. And it also presents a chance to change how people live in Massachusetts as well, because we can build transit-oriented development around these train stations. People can commute without a car, they can walk, they can bike. And I think it would be in our best interest to do the rail right. Because currently as it stands, the train timetable for the Lakeshore Limited from Springfield to Boston is 2 hours and 28 minutes. For reference, the Boston Albany, when it was owned by the New York Central in 1922, had a train called the Twilight Express. It can make the run from Springfield to Boston in 2 hours and 25 minutes. We are currently running trains slower than 101 years ago. And the earliest I could find a train that ran slower than that was in 1912, when it could do the run in 2 hours and 31 minutes, which is like 4 minutes slower. So I think we should, if anything, we should do alternative 4-5 and electrify as much of the line as possible to ensure speedy rail and clean rail as well to put the pollution, and also just give reliable passenger service that people can rely on to commute to Boston or visit Boston for a day, visit Chester, visit Pittsfield. The Berkshires is quite beautiful. Or since I believe Amtrak said they want to go to Albany, or they can go to Albany and link up with the Empire Service or the Lakeshore Limited all the way out to Buffalo. And we once again can have a rail connection to our state capital. Since like there was mentioned, the Hartford line, we have a better connection to Hartford, and we have a better connection to New York City through the New York Northeast Regional line, that branch that terminates in Springfield. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Bill, thank you. I think everyone realized you covered quite a lot at the pace, and thank you very much. Really appreciate it. So let me got a couple of names here. I don't know. Jen Healy, you had testified earlier. You're good. Okay. And thank you. And we received testimony earlier today from her. And thank you again for that. I have Jay Flynn from Transportation. Mr. Chair, I saw you.
Wants to hear me talk explicitly about transit and link. In the interest of you all getting home in time, I'll stand on my earlier testimony.
You got a sense then maybe I was trying to telegraph a message. Okay. Thank you. And in fairness to Mr. Flynn, the records and the tapes of these hearings are available. And so the comments have not been lost. They're part of the record. We are left then with one person remotely, and then we'll have the presentation. So we have, I'm told online, Catherine Nordstrom.
hear me?
If you're still available to us?
Yes. Are you able to hear me?
We can. Please
Okay,
proceed.
thank you. I live in Springfield and McKnight. We moved here from Eastern Mass in 2021, so we could afford a good house. And I'd like to share how I've thought about the rail since then. More than 100 years ago, Boston had a problem. It had too many people and not enough water. The state intervened and developed the Quabbin Reservoir project over many years, which ultimately destroyed towns and connections between towns in Western Massachusetts, including a railroad line. When Boston had a need, the state built an artery to bring resources from Western Massachusetts to Eastern Massachusetts. Water resources from Western Mass have enabled the continued prosperity of the Boston metro area. Western Massachusetts deserves an artery that would allow the resources to flow in the other direction, from Eastern Mass to Western Mass. Moreover, Eastern Massachusetts needs it too. The Quabbin may have provided the water that the Boston area needed, but now it desperately needs housing and space. Western Mass needs the economic opportunities that exist in Eastern Mass, the economic engine that has flourished because the residents and businesses there have something from us as essential as water. Eastern Massachusetts needs housing and space too. All of Massachusetts deserves this project, and I think it's a matter of fairness in which there are no losers. In order for this to work, it does need to be a high-speed rail. I think studies need to consider that Western Mass, as it exists now, could be radically different if a strong connection was made between the West and East. So just because demand doesn't exist now, doesn't mean that it wouldn't emerge. So I really appreciate all the work that has already been put into this effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've covered everyone who is signed in. However, if you're here and didn't realize to testify, you would sign in. So I make this offer. Is there somebody else out there who still wishes to speak tonight? Please come forward.
Thank you. My name is Peter Miller. I'm the Director of Community Development for the City of Westfield. I'll be very brief. I'm here on behalf of Mayor McCabe. Mayor Mike McCabe from Westfield has expressed his strong support for the West-East Rail. It's not something that's necessarily been public in the paper before or anything like that, but certainly as a new mayor, he understands the need for connectivity between the Commonwealth, between Westfield and the rest of the community. We have a lot to offer, and I'll just leave it at that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. And anyone else? Yep, please come.
Good evening. I'm going to be as brief as I can. Also, my name is Tracy Whitfield. I'm the Executive Director for Coalition for Equitable Economy, and I'm also a city councilor right here in Springfield. So my job is a statewide position. This is not prepared remarks, but I have to go out to Boston quite often and throughout the state. And so having this east-west rail will definitely make it for us that, you know, live in the West, travel to the East and vice versa. And so we definitely want you to consider very heavily on moving this along really quickly, because that will benefit the net carbon emissions. It'll benefit our pockets. And we definitely need this. In addition, I was thinking when my old colleague Richie was speaking about the different jobs that are needed to make this a success, we definitely got to look at the equity. We definitely got to make sure that it's an equitable process when we're going through the procurement process, that there is a responsible employer ordinance to make sure that everyone gets a shot at the funding that comes through to make this a success. So that's all that I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience with us. So at this point, this is a presentation. I'm getting a signal. Someone else online? We have one more online. Erica Swallow. You're recognized if you can hear me.
Hi, this is Erica. Can you hear me?
We can. Please, floor is
Wonderful.
yours.
My name is Erica Swallow. I'm a local realtor in Springfield and serve a large swath of Western Massachusetts. And I can't tell you the number of influx of buyers I've had over the past 2 years seeking more affordable housing in this area. And some of those actually citing the East-West Rail and the potential for its development as a reason to start investing in Western Massachusetts. I have buyers looking in Palmer, buyers in Longmeadow and Springfield, and in the Northampton and Amherst areas, all citing the East-West Rail as a reason why they think now is a good time to start investing. I believe we should certainly, this is something that should happen. I can also testify myself. I moved from the Boston area. I'm a graduate of MIT and Simmons, and I moved in 2019 prior to the pandemic. Myself was looking for affordable. I was looking at either getting like a 1,000 square foot condo or a 3,000 square foot single family home in Springfield. And when I discovered the beautiful lifestyle out here, access to natural resources, and the community out here, as well as the history and specifically industrial history and all of the potential for this specifically city of Springfield to be revived even more than it already is today, but continuing to develop downtown, a history that is here. I just fell in love with this city. My career as more hopeful owners coming from the Boston area with that same dream of being able to afford a lifestyle, but also having that ability to go back to the Boston area, even Worcester area, to find here. I'll say one last thing about my own move here. I moved here with a remote job. I was working in the technology industry. I've been serving in the technology industry for almost 2 decades during my career. But when I moved here, and this was 2019, prior to the pandemic, my organization, all remote workers back to the Boston area, and I lost my job. I just purchased my house, and it was 6 months into me being a homeowner here. And I made the choice to stay in Western Massachusetts because of the lifestyle I had been able to attain. I redeveloped my career to be able to stay here, and am hoping, and that's why I'm serving to help others move to this area from New York, even further away, Maine, Texas, Alabama, even California, because this region is something that attracts a lot, from a lot of people with that lifestyle in mind. The East-West Rail will help those buyers make that choice, bring the type of disposable income we need in this region to better build our economy here in Western Massachusetts. Thank you so much for bringing your delegation here to hear the locals, because this is something
Well, that's an appropriate point. Thank you. No, I think the point is well made and well taken. So we have one last person to testify. Please come up.
Thank you. And I had no plan on speaking. So when Mr. Williams tells you to speak, you speak. So my name is Asia.
It's the same way in the House chamber.
I'm sure it is. My name is Angela Rivera. I am a lifelong member of Springfield, Massachusetts. I run a freight brokerage in Springfield, Mass, along with the city of First. I am the first Black-owned, woman-owned freight brokerage in Springfield, Mass. And what we are a third-party logistics coordinator. So my interest in East-West Rail would be logistics and construction. So thank you for letting me speak, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think we're set up, and I'll recognize Meredith Schlesinger, and this I think it adds context and very helpful for people watching and those in attendance.
Now I'm tied up in the cord. It's good to be here. John Weston from my team is going to be advancing the slides. So thank you, John, and for everything else that you do. So everyone started their remarks with where they live and where they're from. And so this is where I confess that I'm from out of town. I moved to Boston in July of 2020, which is an interesting time to move. But my sister was the original project manager for the East-West Passenger Rail Study. So my family in Washington, D.C. has been paying a lot of attention to this for a very long time. So I'm going to give some background on kind of what we've been doing over the past year and a half or so. And I think this is a good time to also mention, I've been hearing everyone talk about how East-West Rail is a project. It's really a program of projects. There are a lot of different elements that need to happen to enhance rail service. Some of this is incremental, but where we'll see benefits, in the shorter term that don't necessarily require, everything getting done, but we'll be able to build gradually over. On November 15th of 2021. That was actually right around the time that MassDOT came out with its governance white paper, which recommended a rail authority and that Amtrak be the operator of the service, given their statutory rights to operate on freight tracks. So the infrastructure bill had several new and enhanced rail programs, a railroad crossing elimination program, the Consolidated Rail and Infrastructure Safety Improvements Program, which just got much more funding. This is a catch-all program for passenger freight safety, any kind of rail-related project you can think of. And then the Federal State Partnership for Intercity Passenger Rail for the National Network. This is for, growing passenger rail off of the Northeast Corridor. So that's really the project that's relevant for growing the program relevant for growing Western Massachusetts rail. Then there's this corridor identification and development program. This is a program that the Federal Railroad Administration is creating to create a pipeline of projects and identify corridors that would be developed over time. Because Massachusetts is a longstanding state with a lot of rail. This is we're much farther ahead than many other states, but this program also kind of captures planning for new corridors as well. So the other thing that happened in the past year or so is that CSX completed its acquisition of Pan Am Railways. Through this acquisition, we spent a lot of time negotiating with them about the Commonwealth's priorities. And from that merger and those agreements, we got the Berkshire Flyer service up and running, and they agreed to work with us on growing allowing passenger rail service on their Boston and Albany main line. And up to that point, they had not been particularly enthusiastic about that notion. We've been working really well with them since then, and I'm just pleased that that's moving forward. And as Chair Strauss mentioned earlier, the bond bill was also signed in August, providing an authorization for funding for West East Rail. Next slide. So these are some of the activities that we have in terms of grant applications and awards. So last summer, we were awarded $1.75 million from the CRISI program for preliminary engineering and environmental analysis for what we're calling the Springfield Track Reconfiguration Project. We've heard a lot about how earlier at the last meeting, how like the Vermonter and the Lakeshore Limited don't meet. And there's a lot of sort of conflicting moves with the trains there that are inefficient, that this project, once constructed, will help separate passenger and freight operations and just give more operational flexibility for service. So, and that will benefit the kind of current, Valley Flyer, north-south services, as well as any future west-east services. So that's really foundational. Like Springfield really is we're trying to make this the second, hub of New England. We also are supporting the City of West Springfield's application for the Front Street Grade Crossing Elimination Project. We're putting up 10% of the $24 million, and we're hoping to hear about that soon. We also submitted an application in November for kind of the big project for $108 million for the CRISI program for the Inland Route project. So that would be making improvements between Springfield and Worcester on the CSX owned portion of the line, and eventually having 2 additional trains serving Boston, Springfield to New Haven. We're actually going to resubmit that application in about a month because there's another funding bucket where that project could be eligible, and we don't want to leave that on the table. So that's again, the federal state partnership program. Next slide. So for this inland route project, again, like the goal is to improve speeds and capacity on the Boston and Albany line between Worcester and Springfield, make capacity improvements that support the passenger service, and also help CSX and the Grafton and Upton Railroad with their freight services. And again, have 2 daily Amtrak round trips operating between Boston and New Haven via Springfield. Next slide. So this is just sort of a map of the project. And, this is a really great partnership that we have with Amtrak. We're putting up $18 million for this $135 million project. Amtrak's putting up $9 million. And so we're seeking $108 million in total from the FRA. Amtrak did do some ridership analysis and using their model. And so this estimate up here for 69,600 annual riders is based on new riders, and it assumes no changes in existing travel and demographic trends, and doesn't reflect induced demand or change in travel patterns resulting from the project. So, this is conservative. And, an immediate benefit once the project's completed is that the travel time on the Lakeshore Limited between Boston and Springfield would be reduced by 18 to 20 minutes. The real goal here is to have service between Springfield and Boston in 2 hours. In terms of corridor planning, we are working with our neighboring states in Connecticut for their Hartford line program, because we also fund the Amtrak Hartford line as well. We're also submitting formally the Boston and Albany corridor and the inland route. Together, we had submitted FRA asked for expression of interest last summer. This is the application just to get more planning funding to refine the work that we've already done. And we'll also be a joint applicant with Vermont for the Vermonter that we also fund with them. They have ambitions to run from Springfield to Montreal. So that was something that we're also in support of. And then again, Governor Healy included about $12.5 million in the budget from the fair share funding for planning and design of Palmer Station and design and construction for the Pittsfield Station improvements. Those Pittsfield Station improvements were part of the deal with CSX to run the Berkshire Flyer for more than 2 years. So we are getting underway on trying to start staffing that up and procuring all the consultant services we need in order to make that happen. So that's just a quick overview of the stuff that we've been doing while the commission has, continues to deliberate, and will continue to do that work. There's a lot to do. There's a lot happening, and just wanted to have the opportunity to tell everyone in sort of one place what, what we're moving ahead with.
Thank you very much. I hope that those here in attendance and those watching remotely found that as helpful as it has been for members of the commission. And so I will close and turn it over to my colleague, but I want to thank everyone who's been in attendance, certainly the commission members and the public and other local elected officials and participants. I have tried to fight, which is what ultimately will be a losing effort, to be precise in the terminology here. And I know everyone, because it's much easier, calls it, whether it's west-east or east-west. But I hope you've gotten a sense, and we have from the number of meetings we've had, that that is a label that means different things to different people. And when you just heard this last presentation, you'll realize that why, at least I've been encouraging people to think about it as Western Mass passenger rail. It's not the same as commuter rail. It's quite different. And as you just heard, it could be defined as 5, 10, maybe even 15 discrete projects. So it's not quite like my rail project, where one day it's not there and then the next day somebody says, yes, get on the train. You can ride the whole way to Boston. Elements are there now. So pieces in progress occur and will occur, no doubt. We may still call it East-West Rail, but it means lots of different things. So I just point that out as something I've come to learn through this commission process. So with that, I'll turn it back over to my Senate coach.
Thank you, Chair Strauss. I will be brief. Just again, want to thank everyone for taking the time to come out. And we had one question that was brought up at the last hearing about in terms of, when we'll wrap up our work, when the reports due. So I think originally it was March 31st. Obviously, that's not going to happen. We want to take our time, do it right, make sure we hear from all voices. We have 2 hearings left. So it's going to be, could happen anytime, the deadline being June 30th. So I recommend anyone here that wants to submit testimony to please do so. We're taking this very seriously, obviously, and we want to get as much testimony and commentary from all of you. With that, I think I'm going to flip a coin on whose couch I'm going to sleep on, whether Bud or Adam tonight. It's past my bedtime now, but I appreciate all of you coming out here tonight and safe travels home. Thank you.